Hey everyone, well I am here in the North Valley of Albuquerque, right on the banks of the Rio Grande, and as you can see, the river is flowing, and right here on this bank right behind me is a flock of sandhill cranes, and this is just one of my most favorite times of year here in New Mexico. We are on one of the most important North American flyways here in New Mexico, and every year we are so blessed to be visited by sandhill cranes and snow geese and all kinds of migratory birds who fly down our great river. And as many of you know, our river was devastatingly bone dry just a few months ago, and so I'm just so grateful to see our river flowing again. It's just it gives me so much joy. And I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about what we're doing to protect our rivers and our waters here in New Mexico, and about the impacts of climate change, because the river going dry this year was a direct result of the devastating impacts of climate change here in New Mexico. We had record low snowpack last year. Our hydrology is changing, and not only did that impact the river and the wildlife and all of the communities that depend on these life-giving waters, but also, of course, it impacts our industries, it impacts our farmers, it impacts our ranchers. And we know that we have to continue to address climate change. We have to continue to invest in water infrastructure and, of course, the protection of these beautiful and sacred places along our rivers and streams all across the state. So I was scheduled to actually head to the International Climate Conference for the UN that was going to be held in Brazil this year. The COP was going to be in Belém in Brazil, but unfortunately, because of the government shutdown, I'm not able to go, but I'm grateful I get to be here in Albuquerque, which is also a joy as well. But it's really, really important right now that we continue to show strength on the international stage. I don't know if you all can see this, but these cranes are flying down the river. Man, I love it. And it's just so important that the United States continue to show up. As many of you probably know, the Trump administration has not only removed the United States from international climate agreements, but also has mass fired federal employees who work on climate issues all across our federal agencies, including the State Department. They've cut funding for climate programs, and one of the signature pieces of the big ugly bill that they shoved through Congress just a few months ago was to gut many of the climate provisions that we passed in the Inflation Reduction Act, which, by the way, was the largest climate and clean energy bill, not only in the history of the United States, but in the history of any country ever on planet Earth. That bill, it made historic investments in helping the United States, our utilities, our energy economy transition so that we can protect the planet and protect our precious waterways. And so one of the fights that we're fighting right now is to restore the provisions that were cut in the big ugly bill. I just joined my colleague on the Ways and Means Committee, Representative Thompson from California, who is the primary lead on that bill to restore those clean energy provisions. We're also working on legislation to not only protect the parts of the bill that were investments in resilience, but also my office has been working for years on legislation and investments in climate justice, because we know our communities is where climate touches down, and especially in places like New Mexico, where our water and our land are so sacred and so sensitive to the changes. So that is some of the work that we're doing on the climate front. As you all know, I'm a water resources science nerd. I've worked in this field my entire career. So we're also doing a tremendous amount of work to protect our community's water rights, from co-sponsoring tribal and Pueblo water rights settlements to protection of our acequias and inclusion in the Farm Bill, as well as protection of traditional uses of our land grants, And we're also working, of course, to protect our public lands. And to that point, we heard some devastating news this week that the Trump administration had noticed that they were going to try to revoke protections for Chaco Canyon. Now, for those of you that know Chaco Canyon here in New Mexico, it's not only an incredibly important place historically and culturally for the entire United States, it's actually one of the most sacred sites for many of our tribal communities. It's a place for prayer, for dances, and that is tied to many of our Pueblo communities as an ancestral land and as a living place where sacred prayers and practices continue to this day, as well as for our Diné, our Navajo communities that live in that landscape as well. And so we are fighting back with everything that we have to not only protect Chaco Canyon, but to protect our public lands in general. There's some more cranes, and to make sure that these sacred places, our lands and waters, are protected for generations to come. So that is our work, and there's some more cranes flying over here. It's just such a beautiful day down here. This is our work to protect New Mexico and to protect our communities. So continue to show up, continue to speak out, continue to advocate for our public lands and waters, and I will be there with you on the front lines, or in this case, on the front lines of our rivers and streams. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all later.